Welcome everyone to our class on iyun b'Gemara. We're of course tracing and explaining this the pasuk of Meitav Sdei Meitav Kam Yishalom from its source with Kodesh Baruch Hu, 3,200 years ago, given on Har Sinai, and we are involved in all its beautiful details. So, as we mentioned many times, a few major junctions here. The Mishnah extended this rule not from the local case. It only exists in the case of a regel and chain, but the Mishnah extended it to all the Arba Avos, and then we even had it extended further in the Gemara to all the 24 Nezikin. Very good. And then we read Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel in the Gemara, and the Gemara concluded that Rabbi Akiva said that this meitav is a way to pay back the nizak. It's not an evaluation. It's a way. It's one of the methods to pay back. Which Abaya said, well, wait a minute. If that's a method, then what do we do with Subin? I mean, that's a contradiction. If you can pay back with the best, means you can't pay back with the worst, and yet we see you can pay back with the worst. So we looked at the pasuk there, and it said Kesev Yashiv Labalav, and the drush was that the Yashiv means you can return any type of hashava as long as it has money, of course. It has to be equal to the damage. So we're left with three variables. We have the Kesev, the Shava Kesev, and the Meitav. Now, those three variables, the question is then became, is there a preference one over the other? So when we read Rev Papa, it seems that the Rif and the Rush, and also the Tosfos and Rabbeinu Tam hold that the Rev Papa from Rabbi Yeshua held that all three variables were equally available as a payback for the mazik. In other words, the mazik could pay back with either one of them, his will, whatever he wants. If he has all three, he can decide which one to give back to the nizak. That was the Reb Papa and Reb Huna Reb Shua. The Rabbeinu Tam quoted in Sefer Yashar said that the halacha is not like Reb Papa, it's like Reb Huna. The way he understood Reb Huna's statement was, O Kesev, O Meitav. Those are the two alternatives that you must pay with. And if you don't have it, that means you have Kesev or Meitav, then you can use Subin. So Subin fell down from being an equal alternative of the mazik, and it fell down to being a b'diavad alternative to the mazik. And that was how we understood the Rif, the Tosfos, Rabbeinu Tam, the Rush, all those good people. And then we came to a Rishon called the Nemuki Yosef, who quotes both Rambam and the Ramah. And the way he learned the Ramah, first of all, was that there's a triple hierarchy, which is you must give Kesev if you have it. Then, if you don't have Kesev, you can give Metaltalin. Excuse me, just 1 second. That's not true. You can, yes, it is true. You give metaltalin second, and third is meitav karka. And how did that differ from the Rambam? Because the Rambam said that kesev and metaltalin are equal alternatives, and meitav is worse. So both of them, surprisingly, according to the Nemuki Yosef, put land as the worst alternative. And the only difference between the Ramah and the Rambam was between kesev and shava kesev. The Ramah is saying that Kesev is before Shava Kesev, and the Rambam saying Shava Kesev and Kesev are equal. But they both have this chiddush that that karka is the third alternative. So in other words, actually the third or the second, but it's what you give last. That's the most important point. So that was neither like the which said all three are equal, and it wasn't like Reb Papa, because Reb Papa said that all three were equal. That's how we understood him. So this is an interesting development, that the way they learned the Gemara, and of course they can only don't make things up, they don't have the same text that we have. The question is, how did they put land as the last alternative? That's the big question. It's not only academic question because this problem now moves into the halacha. We said that the son of the Rosh writes also that you give karka only after metaltalin. Now we had a problem how to read him. Did he mean like the Nimuk Yosef that you give metaltalin first, and only if you don't have metaltalin, that's the only time that the mazik gives metaltalin, or not? That was the big machlokas between the Beis Yosef and the Bach. And so these two people, that's the big split here in the Tur. Basically what it'll be is the Tur like his father? That's what the Bach and the Drisha will say. And they'll read text to say that he's just telling you that, you know, if the Nizak wants Meitev Karka, because that's what the Pasuk says, or even that's what Rav Huna says, the Mazik doesn't have to give it to him, because the halakha is like Reb Papa. That's how the Bach and the Drisha learned. So nothing has changed. We said it's it's just that the language it means that. In other words, we had to read the Tur in context of the Gemara. So you might have thought that the Nizak can say, I want Meitav because either Rav Huna is the halacha or because it says Meitav in the Pasuk, and we have to tell you that the Beis Din doesn't collect from Meitav. If the Mazik wants to give metaltalin, he can, and the Nizak has no power to say, I want Meitav, because that's the Pasuk. So that left the world in our conventional system, that the halacha is like Reb Papa. The Mazik has all three alternatives equally at his hand, and the Tur was just saying that if the Nizak starts yelling about the Pasuk or Rav Huna, we say that's not the halacha, and that's how the Bach and the Drisha answered. Then we had the Beis Yosef. They made an interesting interpretation of the Tur, that the Tur definitely says that you give Meitav last, and he was influenced by the halacha of malva. In the malva, we give money or metaltalin first, and then we give karka. According to the Rosh, that was limited to money because of a svara. Since the malva gave money, he can also demand money back, and anything closer to money, and metaltalin is closer to money than karka, and therefore he can demand metaltalin back also. And the Beis Yosef says that the Tur applied that a principle to Nezikin, even though the Rosh said it was not applicable, because there's a special reason why the Malva can demand money. That's because he gave money. So since he gave money, he has a right to take it back. Nizik never gave money, lost money, but he never gave money. So he doesn't have that right. But the Beis Yosef says it doesn't matter. There's a way now impact the din of Malva on our case of Nezikim, which is going to be very, very interesting, okay? Because we don't have a Gemara that does that. We have a Svara. Now, I would like to say a few words on that later, but till we get down to our point. Okay. So we just get the initial flow. Okay. So here the Beis Yosef says that really you don't collect land before metaltalin, and that's because it's like Malva. Okay. And he does not mention anything with the Rambam. It's Levush who says that this Tur is like the Rambam, and therefore the Rambam also holds that you give metaltalin before you have before meitav. Good. We said that the same argument now spreads to the Shulchan Aruch, but the Shulchan Aruch copies really the exact lashon of the Rambam, but yet we have the commentaries arguing on what did he mean. Again, the same breakdown. The Sma, who is really the Drisha, says again the Shulchan Aruch is just quoting the standard way of learning the Torah, even though he learned the Torah differently, and he brought the halacha down simply like Reb Papa, and the Rev Shach were in the Rav, and the Shach says no, that the Arbiter and the Shulchan Aruch are all holding this new chiddush that you give meitav list. Okay, let me just explain one little thing here before we start our going into the text. I'd like to bring a thing that I thought about. I just want to bring it to you, just to have it spoken about. Now, you remember this? This was the Gemara.
Yeah, vaguely.
Okay, so we're going to get you back into it. It's the Gemara. Basically, we had the pasuk, Meitav Sedei, Meitav Karmo, and we had Rabbi Shmuel. First, he said it has to do with, the Gemara had a possibility. It has to do with how to evaluate the best land. We said that can't be. Then we said maybe it's a suffix of which land was destroyed. We said it can't be. And then we concluded in the Gemara, we were talking about that the mazik can pay back with meitav. And the only question was, is it when the mazik pay back, do we say he has to pay back with the very, very best of his land, even if he has a super meitav? Or no, he has to pay back with a meitav that's the meitav of the world, and if that's even equal to the zibras of the nizak, we don't care. So that was that. That was the machlokes from Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel. B'kitzur, that was the conclusion there, and we concluded the halacha. There's a rule, the halacha against Rabbi Kiva when he's fighting just one person, the halacha is like him. If he's fighting a group, then it goes according to the group. So it comes out that if the mazik has a meitav land which is equal to the meitav of the world, and then he has super AA or AAA stuff, he has to give his AAA stuff according to the Rabbi Akiva. Okay? The meitav is the meitav of the nizak, and irrespective of what the world's meitav is called. That was the conclusion. But then, if you remember, the Gemara wanted to had another statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva not only said that the din is that we go according to the mazik's meitav, he said, Kal v'choma lahegdish. That was part of his statement. Remember? He said, the din is that you go according to the mazik, and Kal v'choma lahegdish. Okay? If you remember. So the Gemara now was trying to figure out, what is this Kal v'choma lahegdish? Correct? That means we're going to learn the din of paying with meitav to hegdish. Now, we only, in our other chart, remember we had 24 different nezikins that we moved through a gezerah shava to all those 24 different nezikins, okay, of damage. But this statement of Rabbi Akiva says we're going to extend it now to hegdish. So the Gemara says, what did he mean? If he meant the hegdish of Nezikin, in other words, if a man damages a shore that was given to the temple, he has to pay with meitav. So we said that can't be, because the pasuk says you only have to pay damages to your re'ehu, your friend, and not to the temple. Right? So it's not shaykh. So we said, okay, maybe what he meant was if a person gave a mana alai lebedek habayis, he gave a $100 gift to the temple. So it's not talking about Nezikin. It's talking about a donation that he gave. And with a donation, you also have this din of meitav. So the Gemara said, wait a minute, that can't be, because a donation is just called a Baal Chov. I see that this is reversed some way. A donation is called a Baal Chov. And a Baal Chov only plays with Baininus. Let me just fix this if you don't mind. Little technical thing here. I don't like these mistakes here. Okay. So we said, wait a minute. When he gave $100 to the temple, it's only a Baal Chov. A Baal Chov only pays with Baininus, not with Idis. And if you'll tell me, well, maybe Rebbe Akiva holds a Baal Chov also pays with Idis. So we had another objection because Hegdish is more chumrah than Baal Chov. Why is it more chumrah? Why is it more chumrah than Baal Chov? Because if you damage Hegdish or Hegdish damages you, one second, I just forgot the Gemara again. We said, mana alai lekabai. So we said, okay, maybe that's the Kal V'chomer. We said that's only a Baal Chov, and a Baal Chov is only pays Baininus, right? Maybe you'll say the Baal Chov, according to Rebbe Akiva, pays with Idis. So we said, even so, even if a Baal Chov would pay with Idis, but Hegdish is more Chumrah than no. What did we say? Oh yeah. I forgot the Gemara. What did we say? We said that what's the objection? You can't learn Baal Chov from Nezikin because Nezikin is more Chumrah than Baal Chov. Why is not Nasun? It's no Baal Chov. 1 second, I just forgot the Gemara here. 1 second. We said okay, maybe you'll learn Baal Chov from Nezikin, and you can't. Why? Because Baal Chov. I forgot. Why can't you learn Baal Chov from Nezikin?
From Nezikin or from Hektish?
No, yeah, you're right. Why can't we learn? No, we want to learn. We're saying that the case of Hektish is Baal Chov, right?
But it's more Chumrah.
But we're saying it's more. But it's not. So Hegdish is going to be more Chumrah than Baal Chov, right? It's more Chumrah than Baal Chov, and therefore we can't learn it. That's what we said. Okay. Okay. Just 1 second. This bothered me, so I'm sorry. Okay. So therefore, what do we do? Hebrew. Okay, so what do? We went back and we said, it must be, we were Chadesh, that, I don't know why all this went crazy. We said that Rebbe Akiva holds like Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, that Tam and Muad pays. So therefore we said it really is talking about Nezikin, and according to Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, there's no, that even if you do damage Hegdish, you have to pay. That's how we concluded. Okay? You don't mind if I just do these two things? It bothers me. No, I know it switches sometimes. Okay. So now the point that I want to bring out here, we said that Hegdish, we said that we wanted, maybe Rebbe Akiva was going to learn, really, Manalai Lebedek Abayis is the case of Baal Chov, right? The case of Baal Chov, right? And maybe that's what Rebbe Akiva meant, that just like in Hegdish you pay Meitav, and Baal Chov you also pay Meitav, right? So we said that can't be, because in Baal Chov you only pay with Baininus. That's what we said. We don't pay in Meitav. And even if you want to tell me we do pay in Meitav, Hegdish is more Chumrah than Baal Chov, right? So then we switched the case and we said, no, we're really talking about Nezikin, and he holds like Reb Shimon ben Manasseh. Fine. But when it came to, if I ask you, what is the relationship between Hegdish and Baal Chov? Hegdish and Baal Chov. So our first thing was to say that in Baal Chov, the din is that you pay in Baininus, right? So you can't learn Baal Chov from the Hegdish. Why? Because we wanted to, let's go again slowly. I have to go over this again. Rebbe Akiva said that the din of Meitav is Kal V'chomer to Hegdish, right? So on this side of the equation, we said, well, maybe Hegdish is a Baal Chov, right? So we said, well, it doesn't make sense. If he said that if we have the din in Nezikin, we can learn a Kal V'chomer to Hegdish, then it would turn out that Hegdish is Idis, and we know, then it would turn out, I'm sorry, let's go again. I have to be very clear here. Let's start slowly again. We're saying the case, on this side of the formula, we're saying the possibility is a person said he's giving $100 to Hegdish, and that's the case he's talking about, which is a case of Baal Chov, right? That's how we're learning up to this point, right? So, and we're saying that the only objection that we have of learning from Hegdish to Baal Chov is that it's a different din, right? Baal Chov is only Beinonus. Is that correct? In other words, let's say the case of Hegdish is talking about a Baal Chov, right? And we want to learn Baal Chov from Nezikin. Here's Nezikin, we want to learn Baal Chov. What's the objection? That the din is different. That in Baal Chov, the din is Beinonus. So you can't tell me he meant Kal V'chomer, because there is no din of Meitav in Baal Chov. Correct? So we said maybe he holds Idius. Maybe he disagrees. Maybe he holds that with a Hegdish it's also Idius. It's Meitav also. Correct?
Wait, I'm not quite following.
Yeah. Let's go again. Yeah.
So we're saying Hektish is brought in as a possible extension, like as he's saying, it's Kal V'chomer.
Right.
If this holds true by Nezikin, so Kal V'chomer Hektish would suggest that Hektish, it's a type of Nezikin, or at least there's a commonality between them, and then Hektish is itself then. Hektish is I mean, what the idea is proposed that Hektish is a type of Baal Chov.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's the question now. Is it doesn't really qualify for Baal Chov because Baal Chov is something that we only pay back with Beinonus, right? Or Zibris.
That's right. But Beinonus. Right. Exactly.
Beinonus. Okay. And therefore, it cannot qualify as a species of Baal Chov.
That's right. So when he said Kal V'chomer to Hegdish, and this Hegdish was saying is really a Baal Chov, it won't work, right? Because it isn't Kal V'chomer, because the din in Baal Chov is Beinonus. It's not Idis, right? That was the step up to here, right? No. If we're going to learn, let's get in. If you're going to learn from Nezikin to Hegdish, the din has to be that Hegdish has Idis, right? Din is Meitav, so then you're going to have to learn that Hegdish is also Meitav, which is called Idis. It's just a different name for it, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the result has to be, to understand Rabbi Akiva, the result has to be a Kal V'chomer which will produce Idis or Meitav, same thing, in Hegdish, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we said, okay, so maybe he's talking about a Baal Chov of Hegdish. So we said, well, that won't help you because if it's a Baal Chov, then you're only going to get to Beinonus. You won't get to Idis. You want to learn from the Nezikin Idis down to Hegdish Baal Chov. Well, you can't do it because the law in Baal Chov is Beinonus, right? Right? So it's no problem. It could be that Rabbi Akiva's Machadesh, that even a Baal Chov of Hegdish pays Idis. That's how we got around the situation. Maybe that's his Chiddush. Maybe the Chiddush.
In other words, that it's a peculiar type of Baal Chov.
Exactly. The Baal Chov.
It's just a special type.
Yeah. Right?
Okay.
So we said that can't be. Okay? We said can't be because Hegdish has to turn out to be more Chumrah than Nezikin. That's how we found out. We said, so you wouldn't have a Kal V'chomer because it'll turn out that Hegdish is more Chumrah. And even if the din, so the din in Hegdish, well, one second, that's no good. One second. Let me just think again. If we have Nezikin and, no, just the opposite. I'm sorry. Nezikin is more Chumrah than Hegdish. Nezikin is more Chumrah than Hegdish. Why is Nezikin more Chumrah than Hegdish? Because Hegdish is Pater in Nezikin, right? That's what we said. We said over here that Hegdish has a Patur in Nezikin, but Nezikin the regular Nezikin, in other words, Hegdish, when you damage Nezik, well, no, I'm sorry, it was a Balcho. Yeah, we said Hegdish is more Makel because you don't pay when you hit Nezikin. Slowly, is that right?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? I don't know what you mean by that.
We said like this. Let's get down. Let's go slowly. We have Nezikin. We want to learn Hegdish. And let's say Nezikin pays Idis and Hegdish pays Idis, right? That's what we want to learn. Kal v'chomer. And this case is Balchov. And this case is a special case of Balchov it's a Balchov. It's $100 to the temple. And you're telling me that Rabbi Akiva says, just like in Nezikin, you have to pay with Idis, so too you have to pay in Hegdish. Kal v'chomer you have to pay in Hegdish. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You with me? Kal v'chomer you have to pay in Hegdish of Balchov.
Right.
Right? So we said that can't be because you have no Kal v'chomer, because Hegdish is less than Nezikin. Why is Hegdish less than Nezikin? Because in Hegdish of Nezikin, you are putter for Nezikin. In other words, this let's just be very careful here. 1 second. There's a chumrah in Nezikin. 1 second. Just think. 1 second. How are we going to break up? This is the move I'm in here over here. So I just lost it. I'm going to break up this move by saying that you cannot learn a kal v'chomer to Hegdish and Balchov because Balchov is going to be more Makel. Why is Balchov in Hegdish more Makel? Let me look at the Gemara. I'm sorry. I just lost.
I mean, it is.
It's going to be
in this kal v'chomer. The chomerdik position is that of Nezikin.
That's correct.
And Hektish is the kal. That's why it's a kal v'chomer.
Well, no, not really, because we have a chumrah here. We have a chumrah here that won't move over to here. Why won't this chumrah move down to here? That's the question. We have a chumrah in Nezikin.
Okay, I mean, ultimately, but I'm saying, I'm just saying in the way the flow of the argument, right? When he says at the point at which he says kal v'chomer,
yes,
it's just at that point. I mean, it's going to be a dead end, fine, but before we discover it's a dead end, so kal v'chomer means that if this is true in the case of Nezikin, in other words, if we pay Idis by Nezikin, so kal v'chomer by Hektish, so Hektish it's like even more obvious. It's a kal compared to Nezikin, but it's a kal because it's even more obvious that we pay Idis, not that we pay.
Right.
See what I'm saying? It's not that the diminution is not that we pay cheaper stuff by Hektish, it's that we pay the best stuff. That's why it's kal, because it's even more obvious that we pay Idis. It's the Idis should be Idis, in a way.
Just say it again. In this point in the argument, say it again, please. How's it going to be a kal v'chomer?
Okay,
if already in Nezikin,
I mean, that's what,
if Nezikin, the original, this kal before we break it, if Nezikin pays Idis, then certainly Hegdish should be Idis. And we're talking about Balchov. If Nezikin pays Idis, then certainly the Balchov of Hegdish should pay Idis.
Right. And that, what I'm saying is it's a little bit confusing because when you say kal, it sounds like it's a diminution. That sounds like you're grading down. But it's actually an upgrade. The kal is
What is upgrade? What is an upgrade? Spell it
out. Because when you say kal v'chomer, like, you know, a fortiori, you're saying I'm going from the stronger case to the more obvious case, to the lighter case. So Hektish is right? Like if it's so obvious by Nezikin, then for sure it's obvious by Hektish.
Well, no. Again, we have to be careful here. There's a chumrah in Nezikin. There's a chumrah in Nezikin that it pays Meitav, right?
Right. So when we say that the Hektish by comparison is kal,
the Hektish is not kal. I mean, the Hektish is a kal. It's more chumrah. The Hektish is more chumrah.
Okay, fine. Kal v'chomer. Okay, and that's okay. Good. Right. So good. So I was mixing the language. Okay. So the chumrah then is that if we're paying Idis by Nezikin, then we should be paying. You know, Idis should be Idis by Hektish, as it were.
Or at least Idis, the same.
Yeah, well, because it's kal v'chomer, there's like it's saying it's stronger, right?
Yeah, but you can never get
Yes.
from a kal v'chomer a din that's stronger than the source. Okay, that's
Okay.
whole machlokus. But
Right.
okay, but if we pay in the weaker case, which is a chulin case of hegdish,
Right.
right? It is, so certainly when it comes to a balchov of hegdish, you would have to pay idis,
Right.
right?
Right.
And maybe that's what Rebbe Akiva holds. That the truth is that we can learn balchov from Nezikin Kal V'chomer. So if Nezikin pays idis, certainly hegdish of balchov would pay idis.
But is it the balchov aspect or the hektish
Only the
aspect that
balchov.
is?
Oh, now that's a very subtle question. I can't answer that so well.
That's the question here, right?
Yes, I can't answer that so well. Is it because it's a hegdish plus balchov that made it the difference, or just that it's a balchov? What made it chumrah?
Right.
So I can't answer that authority. I mean, with definitude. But let's say simply that hegdish is always more chumrah than chol. Okay.
Right. But then, see, my question would be, why didn't Rabbi Akiva, if he's saying kal v'chomer, why doesn't he just say balchov? He specifies hektish as a very specific type of balchov.
Very good.
Because
Very
it
good.
seems that the issue is one of hektish, not of balchov.
Right? No, but it's a hegdish of balchov, you have to say. It's a mix here, right? Maybe not normal hegdish, but a hegdish of balchov, right?
Right. I'm saying of all the balchovs, it's a very specific and special
Correct.
type of balchov.
Correct. So
It's
exactly.
going to the Beis Hamikdash, so. Yeah.
Exactly. So it has a din of balchov, but the fact that it's hegdish means that it should pay idis. So we have a few things that we're mixing up here, or a few boxes. Okay, this is not simple. Okay, because first of all, what does Nezikin have to do with balchov? There's two different activities, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yet the Gemara is entertaining that we could learn the balchov from the Nezikin. And the only problem that's getting into the way here is the hegdish, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
But the fact that I could learn from Nezikin to balchov doesn't seem to be bothering so much, except for the fact that balchov normally is baininus, okay? But in principle, what I'm saying here, in principle, we're learning from Nezikin to balchov.
Right.
And we're going to end up saying that we cannot do it because hegdish has a certain quality that makes it cooler than Nezikin. Why? It's putter when a yachid damages when a yachid damages hegdish, he's putter. That's up to this part of the equation. That's what we're holding. It says re'ehu. So re'ehu means that the hegdish aspect of Nezikin is weaker than the normal aspect of Nezikin, right? Because it only applies because of your putter in damaging hegdish.
But not re'ehu, but not your neighbor.
Not your neighbor. But if I ask you, as far as the relationship of Nezikin, in the two cases of Nezikin, Re'ehu and Hegdish, which one is more Chumrah? Or which one is more Kal? It doesn't really matter. The Chol Nezikin or the Hegdish Nezikin?
The hektish Nezikin seems to be the Kal case.
Exactly. That's Kal, right?
Yeah.
So we said, since the Hegdish Nezikin is Kal, right? You cannot make a kal v'chomer to the balchov hegdish, because in general the hegdish nezikin is more makel than so the source will come out in the final analysis less. Since the nezikin aspect of hegdish is less than the whole aspect, and you're trying to learn this mixed case of a balchov hegdish, it's going to come out less because the hekdish aspect of it is less than the Hegdish aspect of it comes out to be weaker in the Nezikin aspect than the source case. I hope I'm being clear on that.
Let me ask you this.
Let you say it again.
Well, I mean, I hear you. But my question is this: if it's the hektish aspect of it that brings it down and makes it inferior to chol, case of chol, secular case of damages, so wouldn't that suggest that it's the balchov aspect of the hektish balchov that's pulling it up? If you see what I mean?
But they're saying you cannot. That what they're saying is that this comment, you're right. You said very accurately. We have a case of balchov and hegdish here, right?
Yeah.
Which aspect is operating? They're both aspects are here, right? Right. We're saying here that once you tried to tell me that the hegdish aspect operant here, this is a hegdish balchov, exactly as you said, not a hegdish balchov. So once you have a hegdish balchov, then it'll turn out that that hegdish aspect is going to turn out to be weaker than the source of the nezikin in nezikin, because the hegdish in nezikin is weaker than the regular nezikin. So you can't learn a kal v'chomer anymore.
Right. But so that's when you're directly comparing nezikin of hekdesh to nezikin hedyot nezikin, right? When you're comparing both of them on strictly with an eye to nezikin, to the damages done,
yes,
then hekdesh will fall below.
Correct.
Which to my mind suggests that when Rabbi Akiva brings it in, so what's pulling it up? What's making where's the kal v'chomer here if it's clearly below? So to my mind, it suggests that Rabbi Akiva brings it in precisely because the balchov aspect is pulling it up. The hekdesh is dragging it down. It's saying no. It's the fact that it's hekdesh puts it below average nezikin. So you go, wait a minute. So why is it like a nezikin? Because it's balchov hekdesh.
Oh, so you see, so they said that if it's normal balchov hekdesh, if it's a normal balchov, if that's the item, that's only going to give you baininess.
Right. That's
so the only way you're going to bring it up is by saying the hegdish aspect. Right?
Right, but only as applied within the balchov scenario, not the nezikin one. Like there's two registers here that it's hard to see how they cross over. One argument is made, see the inferiority of hekdesh is definitely proven with the under the category of nezikin.
Correct.
And the question is, well, wait a minute, how can we drag that over to balchov too?
Well, how can you make a kal v'chomer presumes an equality and a superiority.
Right.
So here the Gemara is knocking out the equality. There's no equality, and certainly there's no superiority. If the source case is going to have a kula in hegdish, so you cannot no longer build. You can't say, well, the balchov is building it up, because your only strength to say kal v'chomer to hegdish is that there's a chumrah in hegdish. So if you knock out that chumrah aspect by saying that the source doesn't have a chumrah in hegdish, then you can't use that to generate a kal v'chomer, to say the other case should be certainly so. I hope I'm being clear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so then the Gemara then, because of that objection, goes and it says, well, Rebbe Akiva is holding like Shimon ben Manasseh, who doesn't have that weakness in hegdish, because he holds there is no re'ehu. You're obligated if you damage hegdish. That's the step of the Gemara. That's what Rebbe Akiva holds. Okay, so he holds it's really chumrah, Rebbe Akiva. So if he holds it's really chumrah, then the Gemara said we can go back to learning. We don't have to go to this case of balchov anymore. We can go to the case of nezikin. The only reason why we couldn't learn simply from hegdish nezikin to hegdish nezikin was because of re'ehu. So, but if you know re'ehu, we can do that. Anyway, what was my point here? Okay, we have to get into this. This is very serious what we're talking about here. But the only point was that you see the Gemara was going to learn from a case of Nezikin to a case of Balchov, correct?
Yeah.
When it came to Hegdish. And its only objection was, well, Hegdish is going to turn out to have a kula, right, of Rehu. That was its only objection. But in principle, it didn't say, wait a minute, Nezikin has nothing to do with Balchov. If in principle the two cases were not analogous, they should have said very simply, hey, you know, what do you're comparing apples and pears. Nezikin is a case of Nezik, and this is a case of Balchov. You know, there's a more essential way to break the relationship. And yet the Gemara didn't do it. The Gemara has technical problems with Hegdish. Is Hegdish a chumrah? Is it not a chumrah? How does it work? But the essential relationship between Nezikin and Balchov was not a problem to the Gemara. It was a minor problem of how Hegdish tunes in. Now, there was the first...
Go to meeting. Online meetings made easy. There are one other callers on the call.
Did I lose you?
Hello?
Did I lose you? Oh, hello? Hello?
No, yeah, I did. Yeah, no, what you said.
Was my,
like you're in a submarine.
Yeah, what happened was my in all the excitement, my earphones and mic fell out of the jack. Okay,
okay.
We're recovered. Okay. Anyway, here was let's see if we can get this slowly. My aim here is to show that there is a relationship between Nezikin and Balchov by this Gemara. That's my aim, because and it's the Rush who said there was no comparison.
You're basically bringing out the background to the Beis Yosef here.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm trying to show the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef is not just hanging in the air. There was a chiddush of the Rush to say that Balchov has nothing to do with Nezikin, because he said in Balchov, since you gave money, you have to pay back money. But Nezikin, that doesn't apply. So we said Balchov, Nezikin, well, it's apples and pears. How could you have a Havamina that they're similar in such a, and then have to find a distinction between them? It's apples and pears. They're two different cases. So I just wanted to bring from here slowly. You see, the Gemara also has a comparison between these two cases. And it destroys the comparison either because it thinks that the standard opinion is that a Balcho pays with Baininus and not with Idis. That's one way it destroyed it. And the other way is, and even if you say that Rabbi Kiva holds Idis, there's still the Hegdish aspect will come out to be cooler. That was the second way it destroyed it. Okay? But it didn't say they were essentially different. Now, let me just go a little slower on this. The first way it knocked it out was by saying that, wait a minute, how can you learn this case of Hegdish as being a Balchov? A Balchov only plays in Baininus, right? And you want to make a Kal V'chomer, Rabbi Akiva, to explain Rabbi Akiva that the Balchov is going to end up paying Idis. So we're going to say there's a possibility in a second that maybe he holds Idis. But the first objection is that the din is different between Balchov and Nezikin, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that could be again a mikra, or it could be an etzem difference. Meaning that the fact that Nezikin pays Meitav makes it essentially different than Balchov, or no, it's enough to make a mikra difference between the two to say that you can't learn a Kal V'chomer from one to the next. Okay.
It is, after all, it's only a quantitative difference.
Exactly. Exactly. So the shaila here will be, is that quantitative difference a qualitative difference or not? Okay, you could say, wait, it's only quantity. What's the difference? I mean, essentially it's the same case. There's just a little bit of an extra chumrah in Nezikin that it pays Meitav. So you can't learn the din of Meitav to Balchov. But it doesn't mean that Nezikin is not essentially a Balchov. It just has a mikri din, a side din, a tuffle din, a minor din. Then it's a little different, as you said, a quantitative difference, but not a qualitative difference. Or no, maybe it makes that makes it qualitatively different. Okay. All I brought this in was, the reason I brought it in is because when we first read the Tur, and he said, the Beis Yosef, and said the Tur is learning from Balchov to Nezikin, So I said, wow, what do the two things have to do with each other? One is an animal or someone destroys someone else's property. The other one is you borrowed some money, you have to give it back. Those are two different cases. What is the comparison between the two? That the rush has to make a difference. So I just wanted to bring up this Gemara, although we didn't really dwell on it to its end, to say it's not such a strange comparison. Now, another thing is, if you remember the Rabbeinu Tam said that there's 3 dinim in Piryon. He said we have a case of Nezikin, Balchov, and Mechektos, and finally the Poel, right? But he put them all again in the same class called Piryon, which we have to define what that Piryon, paying back. You see? So he too is making a categorical similarity between the 3 cases, albeit he's making distinctions in the halacha, but not essential distinctions, but only mikri distinctions, quantitative distinctions, right? One you must pay meitab, one you don't have to pay meitab, and the other one you have to get money. No, you can't use metalton at all. So it's just very interesting. The reason I just brought this up, because I was thinking about where did this Balchov come in that you want to make? Where do we see, in order to make a distinction, you have to have a comparison in the first place, right? You don't make a distinction if you're talking about, airplanes and apples. There's no comparison that you have to say, well, they're different. Well, of course they're different. So it must be in these scenario of the 4 cases, which Rabbeinu Tam says 3, there is a common quality among all of them, and then there's a difference between each one of them, and that will be the subtle learning on which basis the Torah define those differences. Why did the Torah define that certain ones have meitab, certain don't have meitab, certain have kesef? But all I wanted to bring up with this discussion here, because I just found it interesting myself, is that all of a sudden I remember this Gemara, Balchov does shine in here. It's not a stranger to Nezikin. Okay? But we would have to do, because I see, we had no problem with the essential or not, but okay. Anyway, that's a little off our topic, but yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm surprised. Does anybody mention this, or is this your chiddush?
No, it's my chiddush. This is something.
Yeah.
No, this is something again.
Like an important thing to mention. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, they don't. The Beis Yosef just says what he says. It's like this program Windows. You know what I mean? You go. He just gives you the headline, and you're supposed to understand the depth of what he says. You know what I mean? He's giving you, equals MC squared. I'm dealing here with, intelligent people who are very well versed. I'm not dealing here with children. Okay, the children can just read my words, and they like Rashi. The children read Rashi, and they get something from it. But Rashi is talking to Talmidei Chachamim. So when you read,
can I ask you just along these lines? Please. Can we? Is there any indication, like the fact that a whole seder that we're studying here is called Nezikin? Is that in any way an indication that these various categories, like Poel and so on, Balchov, probably fall under this broadest category of Nezikin? Or is that just saying, we need a name for the next couple of halachas and we'll call it Nezikin? So what I'm saying is it a...
Well, you're asking actually a very broad question, because it really, Nezikin, the reason why I'm saying it's even, of course, deeper than you realize, because the originally, Baba Kama and Baba Metzia and Baba Basra were all one unit called Nezikin. And in there, it was called Nezikin only because the first part talks about Nezikin. But then in the middle, Baba Metzia is talking about objects being lost and found. And Baba Basra is talking about property rights. Okay, so it would be altogether, they make up the body of law, what we call civil law. Okay, Ben Adam Lechavaro. That's really what this whole section is. So and it was really broken in, so it was really called Nezikin only because the first part talks about Nezikin. So it was given the name according to the beginning, but really it was a very large category of civil law. Then later they broke it into three parts, and the first part was called Baba Kama, the first gate, the second middle gate, and they didn't use the word Nezikin. They talked about it, three gates, and there it's more three gates to the civil law. But so what I'm saying to you, that Nezikin is the beginning. To answer your question very briefly, Nezikin is the beginning discussion of civil law, and that's why this Seder is called Nezikin. Okay. But really, it's that. But of course, it talks about much more than Nezikin here. Unless you're going to say that, make drugs. I mean, in the Seder, it talks about a lot of all civil law, all business laws, and property laws, and our little first Baba is really concentrating on Nezikin. It has the four avos. It has Gezela and Geneva, which are very, very important, also which are associated to Nezikin. Okay, so that's the first Baba Kama is very, very involved with the Nezikin aspect, but the other Gemaras are not talking about Nezikin at all, and they're all part of the same unit, of what we say to Nezikin. Anyway, I hope I was clear on that. So in other words, you can't say that everything falls under Nezikin. That's all I'm saying.
Not that but I guess, but at the very least, since there was a Seder, so there's some sense, at least pedagogically, if not categorically, of putting Nezikin at the beginning. Right? I guess the Rabbanim saw that in the order of learning civil law, at least from a standpoint of pedagogy, what is this? Maybe it just means what's the simplest thing to learn first is Nezikin. And then
that's another good question they talk about. Why it starts this way? I don't know. I can't answer that.
Yeah, I know. I guess it's too broad a question, but I'm just wondering that even a pedagogic order sometimes suggests that there's a deeper categorical order, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you learn 1 + 1 = 2, and then you end up a few later doing calculus and algebra.
I understand.
You could say really the calculus is all these complex truths of calculus are really contained within the very basic rules of arithmetic, if you understood it properly. It's not just that we happen to start with arithmetic and move on. The simplest truths are the biggest truths. I'm just wondering, but I don't know.
Anyway, okay. But anyway, that's a. But I know it's also very. If you look again, I don't like to say things that are not authoritatively, because it's nice we say Sfaras, but the body of law that the Mishpatim starts with is Nezikin. It's very interesting. So maybe that's why it's chosen first, right? Because when we looked at the pasuk, it says Elu Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lefneihem. It's talking about, well, first talks about murder, then it talks about all the damage cases. So maybe that's why it was picked first, because it's the first topic of law that the Torah talks about. Okay, I mean, that's a supposition, but. I know the Mishnah we've seen that, the Mishnah likes to follow the order of the Chumash if it can, because it's only this explaining the Torah, so it always likes to give kavod to the Abba, which is the Torah. But anyway, whatever it is, the point here is we're holding conceptually in the reason why I brought all this up was, of course, in our analysis here, just 1 second. You see, up to the point of the Rush, the din of Meitav was limited to Nezikin, number one, and he pushed away any analogy to Balchov. Because Balchov, we have the anomaly that money gets precedent over land, okay? In Balchov, the fact is that money gets precedent over land, and then people will say anything like money, like metatlan, also have that same precedent. So in Balchov, we can find that land is in the bottom of the scale, okay? So the Rush eliminated that connection by saying, well, that's a special case, once you gave money, you can get money back. These other people, like the Beis Yosef on the tour, will say, no, that's a Svara, and we were going to bring the Balchov to the Nezikin. But what I was trying to say the opposite way. that if already in Balchov we see a precedent for Kesev over land, so that certainly should happen in Nezikin, where we have chumras of meitav. But see, I'm talking out of both sides of my hat here. It's not so simple because, again, but if you learn, let's learn it like Reb Papa, right? Because you have to be very. I mean, this takes a lot of thought. Reb Papa, the way people are learning, the way we all learned. Reb Papa had a tremendous chiddush. He said, really, the essence of Nezikin is to get money in the hands of the Nizak, right? You're not replacing the item. You're going to give him money. You're not giving him a new cow. Matter of fact, you can't give him a new cow. You have to evaluate what you did in terms of money. And then we have to make sure the Torah wants that the Nizak gets his money back. Then he'll do what the money wants. He'll go buy a different cow. He'll do what he wants. Now, if you say that metaltalin is equal to money, so then he can also give metaltalin back at this as a lechatchila position, as position number one. If you say that meitav is equal to metaltalin, which is equal to money, and all three of them equal, then you end up with the rush. All three of these items are equal. Money, metaltalin, although it's a little less because you have to go sell it, but it's close enough to money that the Torah says we're going to accept it, and meitav, which is close enough to money because the people will be excited to buy it. So if you lower the bar and you say, really, money is what we want, and the Torah lowered the bar a little for metaltalin and meitav, then you'll get all three are equal. And the mazik can give any one of the three. The nizak cannot say anything about it. But if you say not so, that money is the best, because that's what we want in the hands of the nizak, because he has to be free to buy his own cow, and he has to be free to buy whatever he wants, and therefore we really want money. And the Torah put the metaltalin as a way to protect the nizak and say, hey, remember, better you should have something than nothing. If this guy doesn't have money, you better take metaltalin because you'll never get your money back. And then meitav came out to be the third worst possibility. If he doesn't have money, his metaltalin, take his best land, because you're not going to get anything back. So we said, if that's the way we're learning, so then all of a sudden we're going to get a hierarchy in what the mazik shall give back or must give back. And these I can say, I don't want your metaltalin if you have kesef. Or I don't want your land if you have kesef. Or I don't want your land if you have metaltalin. Now, whether we make a hierarchy, we need a source. So the Beis Yosef says the source is Balchov. The analogy between Balchov will now say that what happens in Balchov certainly should happen in Nezikin. Nezikin is more chumrah and in general than Balchov. Why is Nezikin more chumrah than Balchov? Because in Balchov, I don't think no one will hold in Balchov. You have to give back meitav karka, right?
You don't have to give back.
In Balchov, yeah. When you do give back, say he doesn't have meitav and metaltalin, right? You don't have to give him. You say, he doesn't have kesef or he doesn't have metaltalin. No one's going to say he has to give you back meitav karka. In Balchov, the din of meitav karka we only extended to all the Nezikins, right? Now there is a possibility, that maybe Rebbe Akiva holds that, but I mean I don't know. We'd have to get into that Gemara very deeply. But the point, what am I trying to say here? Is that what's exciting over here is that we have another juxtaposition of worlds here. If Nezikin is its own entity, and we just look at Agmara of Reb Papa as saying all three of them are equal, then we leave Nezikin alone. When we cross over to Balchov, we say that's a different entity. There it has its own laws. You have to give money first, and you don't have a din of Meitav, okay? But that has different laws, and that makes those two cases maybe essentially different, or not even essentially different, but at least halachically different, where you can't move. In other words, the Nezikin's Meitav only moved over because we had a Gezerah Shava. So it only extended to the Nezikins. Now you want to tell me a preference that exists in Balchov, and you want to move it into Nezikin. Okay? Now that's going to be debatable, whether you can do such a thing like that. Maybe Nezikin has unique laws which will separate it from Balchov, or maybe not. That's the dion over here. But it's we don't have a Gemara here to put the two. We have a Gemara. That's why I want to bring our Gemara. We don't have a clear Gemara that is putting the two things together or separating them. We have Shonim that are separating them. We have the Rush that wants to separate the din of the in Balchov. We have a din that you must give money first. The Rush says not here in Nezikin. He doesn't bring the Gemara. He says not here in Nezikin. He says a svara. He says in Balchov, special reason why there's a preference of money, which doesn't exist in Nezikin, right? But he didn't quote a Gemara. He said a svara. He said conceptually he said they're different. Then all of a sudden we have the Torah, the Beis Yosef coming in explaining the Torah. It says, well, the Torah disagrees. He says that that distinction is not a distinction, and therefore we move the preference of Kesef and Balchov into Nezikin. But conceptually, what I'm trying to bring here is that there's these two cases where conceptually we have a problem. Does the information going to move from one to the other or not? And since we have no clear Gemara, we're dealing in conceptual reality over here, right? And that's a whole other aspect of learning. There's what's on the page and what's given, and what it means. And now here we have a new level of learning, which is off the page completely, which is you are now involved in the essential cases and their comparison with no text at all. That's a new level of analysis, you know.
Yeah, it's like flying.
You're flying off the page now,
flying off the page.
right? Now you're off the page.
I hear what you're saying. It's I mean, Rabbi Akiva brings in the comparison. When Rabbi Akiva brings in the comparison, it's limited to a consideration of land. Like the whole discussion is limited to land, right?
Right. The din of Meitav. That's right. Din of Meitav Kara.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but when the Beis Yosef brings it in, so he already has made the leap to Kesef.
Exactly.
He's made the transition to Kesef, and that's. So I'm wondering here, like, what's in his mind when he's making the comparison? It makes sense that the Gemara of Rabbi Akiva is in the background here because he's saying, look, they're not completely in two universes. We're talking about more or less the same thing. As we're saying, it's a quantitative difference, but he seems to be bringing it in not just on that basis, which is that they're comparable, but on the Kesef issue specifically.
Right.
That there's a much more important point of comparison here, which is that in both cases there's an issue of Kesef,
right,
which is no longer land. In other words.
Right. So now on the conceptual level, the people will want to answer, and that's what really Nemuki Yosef said, is conceptually that metaltalin is better than land. That's what the Gemara says. Barmi land, and the land only became a stepsister because the best made it, a little better. But the best, he says, conceptually, is money. Everything else is just the shaveh kesef, but it's not kesef itself. It's shaveh kesef, right? So conceptually, he wants to say that, and he has a Ramah who says that kesef is best. So he says conceptually, when Reb Papa made this hierarchy, he already split it into three parts. The essential payback, which is money, and then the things which are the Torah lowering the bar and saying, well, this is also okay because it's so close to money. right? Oh, of course, things that are not close to money, which bainness and zivrus, you'll never get your money back, that the Torah wants to eliminate. So that was a conceptual analysis of that Gemara. Totally conceptual. You know what I'm saying? But that at least was on that was on the page, but it was pushing a conceptual reality into it. Now maybe they needed more. They would have never pushed that conceptual reality into that case if it wasn't for the background case of Malva, where there's a clear preference of money.
So are you saying that the case of Malva, the clarity, you're calling the clarity of that case, is that really money is a kind of default position for all forms of payback? And I mean, it's always been part of the discussion is, what is this whole point of, what's the point of idus? Why is it meitav haaretz?
Exactly.
Is it, is it really that the default position is really kesef, and that because of the certain circumstances that we are dealing with, so we'll allow for meitav haaretz, but really we want kesef all along.
Right.
So if it's kesef all along, then why not bring in that whole discussion? Why not bring in the defining and the clearest case of Malva, which deals with kesef?
Right. And what I'm saying is that since we have a source to say in Malva that money is the first priority in the hierarchy, since we have a source there, they're talking about the conceptual relationship between Baal Chov and Nezikin now. And will we push what we know about Baal Chov into Nezikin or not, conceptually? And the text that we have about Nezikin will be affected by the Malva case. If they're equivalent, then we're going to push it in. If not, not. Okay, but that's like I said, that's off the page in the conceptual world of those spheres interacting with each other.
The question, I guess, the question is why, if in fact the Malva case is the clearest defining case, where kesef is the best way to pay back, so then why? And I can see that the certain extenuating circumstances that make it that if you're going to pay with land, so you better have it's convenient to have to sell it quickly. I mean, the way to sell it quickly in order to get the kesef is to give is to give idus. So my question would be then, well, why doesn't that logic also apply to Malva?
Excellent. So I can make a distinction right away, you see, because in the Malva, the Malva first of all has a mitzvah and did beratzon, gave his money away.
Yeah.
Whereas the Nizak, Bal Korcho, his property was taken away. So the Torah says we got to make sure he gets the money back really quickly. When it comes to Malva, okay, we told you help the poor guy out. We know the Torah knows it's going to be a risk, and we're saying, look, it's better even for you, the Malva, to probably take baininus and zivrus. Why? Because we have this common phrase. Remember, people say, when a guy owes you money, it's better to take subin than nothing. Right? So that was that interplay over there. So it could be that that when it comes to Malva, not because so much it's a mitzvah, but even it's better for the lova, the Malva to accept baininus and zivrus. It's better for him than to wait for idus, because
he may not get it.
He might not get nothing. He'll get nothing. If you say that the Nizak can only pay him back with idus, right? That means if the lova has baininus and zivrus, he can't use it. He has to go out and sell it and bring back money. The Malva will maybe never get his money back till he schleps around, till he sells his property, till he pays his bills, till you know what I mean. And remember, we have a common phrase. The phrase, "When the guy owes you money, take what you can get." Why is that a common phrase? A guy that has
Why
to,
would that phrase not apply to Nezikin then too?
because in the Zekin, normally we're not talking about a poor person that damages.
Ah, yes.
We're talking about a normal person that damages.
Right, right.
It's true that if he happens to be a damager, had a real schlemiel, okay, what can we do? I mean, you know,
Yeah, no,
but but the general
Right.
category, you have most people are not schlemiels like that. I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
But so, you know,
No, the lov is by definition a shlemiel.
exactly. Why is he a lover?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a mazik is not a schlemiel. He just happens to be unfortunate. It's schlemazel, not a schlemiel, right? He's right. He's a schlemazel, but he's not a schlemiel.
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so then the fact that we make a concession, say, okay, you take baininess, you know, ideally he should be paying iris. In other words, like if he were not a shlemazel, he would be paying iris anyway.
That's right.
It's only as a concession. Okay.
That's right. That's right. And some people say even really meikra din he should be paying zibris.
Why?
Some people
Because
even
he's a shlemazel.
no, he's a shlemiel. Yeah, he's a shlemiel. You take from you better take. Don't let a shlemiel, you know, put you off. You're not going to get your money. What do we discuss today? Shlemiel or shlemazel? Okay, so I mean, you know,
But that is the issue. That really is the
that
issue.
really
I mean,
is exactly.
The difference between, that's the defining difference between a love and a mazik, right?
Exactly.
That's the defining difference. I
Exactly.
mean, it's important to get that difference down because otherwise, because we're trying to establish the love as the standard position and saying, and to learn the mazik's position from that. So
Right.
it's important, I guess it's important to stress that that's the only difference between the two of them, is that one of them is a shlemiel. Otherwise, because his position looks weaker, but it's not necessarily weaker. I mean, it's just weaker because of his financial situation, not because. From the standpoint, I mean, if we look at it from the standpoint of the malve and the nizak, there's no difference. They're both equally deserving of payment in cash, and so it only becomes a concession to the love that we say, fine, you know, you better accept baininess from him.
I mean,
But it's
the
not like
malva, right?
The
malva,
malva
right.
Yeah, because it sounds. I mean, why am I saying this? Because when we say that the malva should be taking baininess, it sounds like his position is inferior to that of the nizak. But it sounds like, oh, okay, it's worse. It's worse to be a nizak, and that's why we're bending backwards to make him happy. But it's not necessarily the case. It's not the nizak and the malva are equally deserving. It's not a question of there being one deserving more than the other.
They both deserve their money, exactly.
Exactly. So the difference lies not in the fact that one deserves more than the other. I mean, I think it's important because we're trying to make kesef the standard position, right?
Right.
Which is a position that comes from the malva. So the only difference between them is not actually a difference between the malva and the nizak. The only difference lies between the shlemiel, who is the lova, and the mazik.
Excellent. Now, when it comes to what happens if the mazik does have kesef, that will be the question. Say he does have kesef now. Let's say the lova. If the lova has kesef, he has to give it, right?
Yeah.
He has to give it.
Yeah. Right.
So now, why would you say that the nizak, all of a sudden, the mazik doesn't have to give it, right?
Right.
Like the rush and the riff. No. The mazik can give. Why all of a sudden can the mazik give kesef and shavik kesef and meitav? Why? As you said, the aggrieved party here, whether he's the nizak or the malva, have a perfect right to the money. There's no dispute over here, right? They have a perfect right to get their money back. So how come you want to say the Rush and all these people that no. The mazik can give kesef, shavik kesef, and meitav, according to his desire. But the nizak wants kesef. We don't care what the nizak wants. The mazik can give what he gets, what he wants back. And when it comes to the malva, he can say to the lova, "Hey, you have money. I want it back. I don't want your subin. I don't want your land. If you don't have it, of course I'll accept it, right? But if you do have money, I want your money." So how come this poor nizak can't say, "What the heck do I want all your subin for? What did I do? Was it Torah punishing me for?"
Right.
If you don't have, that's one story. But if you have money, give me money. Why can't the nizak say, "Give me money"? I'm a shlemazel. That guy's a shlemiel. When the shlemiel has money, he gives it. And I'm just a shlemazel that happened to be a victim of your thing. So certainly you should give me money if you have it. How come all of a sudden you're being so nice that you're being hard on me? I have to go now, have my lawn has to be filled up with this suman. I have to run around and give it just because the mazik wants to give it to me. Give him money.
I guess the other consideration then is that, I mean, because then we're asking what's the difference really between the love and the mazik. One difference, of course, is that we're saying that the love is a shlemiel. Okay, so that explains why he's allowed to give the baininess. But the question which might pull the discussion in the other direction is, what rights does the mazik have which the love does not have? Like the lov is a shlemiel, but it may be because he's a shlemiel in the sense that the mazik has more rights. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not. Because it wasn't his. I mean, it was his fault. Okay, it's a damage, but he didn't. You know, the love asked for money. He went in there and he actively asked for money, and now he has the problem of paying it back. But the mazik didn't, do anything to try to damage the nizak's property, so he may have rights that the lova doesn't have. See what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. Very good. You're saying that the mazik never wanted to take the money from the nizak. He's a shlemazel. He's a victim. So as a victim,
right. I'm asking.
I'm saying, I understand what you're saying. As a victim, he can give back because he's like Bal Korcho. You're taking money from me that really I didn't get any hanor from. It was an accident. So since it's an accident, okay. So the Torah says, he can give what he wants. You don't have to give the money away. Let him give his junk. Because you, the nizak, anyway, in a certain way. That's why I said Nezikin gets close to onus, right? Because what did I do? I mean, after all, I didn't damage your property. The animal got out. I didn't watch. I wasn't careful. But so it's a little bit close to onus, and it's a chiddush of the Torah maybe that he has to pay. Okay, you're building the case the other way. Fine. That's exactly the discussion, though, conceptually here. What's happening in the background is this discussion. You see, now, if we had a clear text, so we decide one way or the other. But when we don't have, when we're off the page now, and we have the text that we have, and now we're talking conceptually, is one a kalvam, is one a binyanab, are they essentially the same? Is one qualitatively different or not? Or which do we look at, the mazik, the nizak? There's we have the exciting discussion here, and that's part of the learning. That's another level of depth. That's not only between the lines, that's off the page. Between the lines, at least you have two lines. But here we're off the page. We're conceptual now. Now we're really conceptually, do we make a binyan or not? And that's part of the learning. It's not part of the learning. And as we said, and there's reasons this way and that way. It depends upon how you understand. Now the super big people, remember, like the Rush did bring a raya that all three things have to, or put it this way, I have to be careful. He brought a raya that the halacha could not be like Rav Huna, which means that Meitav Karka was that Subin was the worst. That was that whole Gemara from Rav Kahana. So it can't be that Subin is a second-place citizen. But we said it could be that maybe Meitav is a second-place citizen. That might work. That we have to think about. But he's trying, you see, what he's also, everyone's trying, when you have a problem in Svara like this, it's much better if you can get a text because you're in a Suffolk land. So it's better if you can get some inference, you see. And even if you looked at the Muki Yosef did, he also tried to put this into Reb Papa, and to say if already Papa is making a distinction between land and metaltalin, because land is if you can sell it, metaltalin, if you can sell it here, you can sell it somewhere else. And land not so, and then the Torah said meitav. So then he said, then there should be that. Then we could say he also had the conceptual priority of kesef over metaltalin. That's what the Nemuk Yosef did. Okay, but I don't think he would have said that if he didn't have Balchov in the background. That's what I'm supposing over here. That's what this whole discussion was about. If he didn't have a push from Balchov, I don't know if he would have read the text that way. Because the simple text just is making an equation. That this one lacks in customers, it gains in excitement. When the metaltalin, metaltalin. So, but that's what that was this whole discussion about. You know what I mean? That's and it all really came from the Beis Yosef. Was the first time we read the Beis Yosef, we said, well, Mandakar Shmei Malva. No one talked about Malva. I mean, put it this way, it's Nezikin, it's not Malva. Then we said, wait a minute. Well, that's why I brought this Gemara, because you do have a text that puts them in the same breath, you see. And then there was Tosfos that brought conceptually all these things in a box called Pirion, right? He had 4 cases. Malva, he had the case of Nezikin, then Malva and Mekachtos, and in the bottom of the Poel, all people who you, as you said, rightfully have to give money back to. There's no question about this money here. The aggrieved victim has a full right to his money. Now the only question is, what's his din? Kesef, Shavak Kesef, land, blah, blah. But as far as there's no question that he is owed money. So now the question is, where is the push and pull in this constellation of cases? So, Rabbeinu Tam gives his push and pulls, and then the other Rishonim will disagree. The whole discussion came when you're uneducated as to the factors that are involved in the case. It looks rather strange. Why are you pulling in this Malva case here all of a sudden and saying? And when the Rush made a distinction, because you read the Rush, he makes a clear distinction, and he says there's no comparison between Malva and Nezikin, because Malva he gave money, he has the right to give back. Now, if you're smart and you learn all these books, you'll say to yourself, when someone says yes, you have to say, why did he say yes? He could have said no. Or no, why didn't he say no? He should have said yes. So since the Rush opened up he wrote on his pen not to think so, must mean that other people are thinking so. Right? Because if there was no reason to think so, then why do you have to talk about it? Right? So he's involved in this essential issue here. He's handling those forces, handling those relationship of those cases, and he's writing his conclusion. Yes, I conclude that they're distinctly different because of this factor. So we read it and we think that's the truth, and that's the only thing that's involved here. But when we start, Baruch Hashem, looking at the background issue and realizing what's at stake, now all of a sudden we see that the Rush has a chiddush to separate them. Doesn't mean the chiddush is wrong. He takes his position, but then we have to understand why does this case come in? What's the analogy that pushes the case in, and why is it pushed away? Do we have a text? Do we have a svara? Where is the analogy and where's the break? And that is what the real issues that are on the floor here, except you can't see it. As a beginner, you can't see what's going on here because, if you just reading a case in the law, it's exciting because what else do you have? You don't have the depth of the knowledge. But when they're moving these pieces, that's what they're moving at at that depth, And that's Baruch Hashem what we're trying to touch. That's this whole. That's why I wish, that's my real wish, just to show people the depth. Once you start seeing the depth of what's going on, the maturity and the complexity of what's going on, this only can come from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. There is no, unless you're a fool, you could all say the world also just came by accident. But you can't say a text like this, which is so real, that's talking about real cases, real people, real issues, real evaluations, is made up by Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, it's foolish. I don't care how big he was. There's no mind that can. I told my wife today, the beginning of the Torah is Bereshis Bar Elokim, right? Now I said, first of all, there's no literature that starts off that way, that I know of anyway. Second of all, if someone wanted to write a book, how could he be so presumptuous to say this is how the world was created? You know what I mean? Wouldn't that be pretty presumptuous? I mean, unless he was, I don't know, drunk or smoking something or, taking whatever. I mean, how could he be so presumptuous? Everyone's going to catch him. You weren't there when the world was created, right? How do you know how to talk about when the world was created? And if you're going to guess, people are going to laugh at you. You know what I mean? So you would never try to write it. Look, nowadays you can write fancy fiction and everything else. But I mean, anyone who was seriously trying to convince people that this is the word of God, that he wouldn't start that way. Because it's like it's an issue that, how you were there, about it. What are you talking about? I'm just saying this. The Torah doesn't need my proofs, but when you start getting involved in what's really going on in the Torah, you realize that there's no question that there's, from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Everything from the creation of the world to the last moment. I spoke to my landlord. He's not particularly religious, but he's a little religious, but he's not so much. So I showed him this chazal that says that in the year that the Mashiach comes, Melech Paras will fight with Melech Aravi, and the Melech Aravi will go to Edom, and then Melech Paras will machrid the whole world. And everybody will be nervous and say what will be, and the Jews will be nervous and say what will be. And Hashem says, don't worry, my people, I did this all for you, and this exile won't be like exile Mitzrayim, because after this you won't know any shibud. So I had him read it. He got some mamorot, he told me. Goose pimples.
Yeah. This is a Gemara or from the Nil?
I never showed this to you. Wow, I got to show this to you. It's a Yalkut Shimoni. Yalkut Shimoni on Yeshaya. It's a midrash in Yeshaya, on Yeshaya. Okay, I have to send it to you. Please remind me. You have to show people. He got some more. I was so happy that he got some more. He's listening to the news. You got these crazy guys. I told my wife, who heard of Persia for the last 3,000 years, since the time of Esther, when there was a Persian Empire? Who ever heard of Persia?
That's true.
Tell me who. Then I told him another thing. I said, the Goyim, the Christians anyway, had one person that they held was a Navi. I think his name was Astronomus. I'm not sure. He had one guy. And what was his Navius? That the Jews would never come back there to Israel.
The Jews would never come back?
That was his Navius. That's the only Navius, the only Navuah that he had. Right? So he is one, right? And we have hundreds of Naviim, and much more than we have the Nevi'im that we have, plus we have all the Gemaras and the Chazals, and every single one has come true, or is about to come true. You know what I mean? It's like, you just can't, I mean, you can argue with anything, but I mean, it's just ridiculous. That's why this guy got goose pimples. He says, wait a minute, this was written thousands of years ago, and it's happening right now. I said, yeah, Torah's emes and Hashem's emes, Torah's emes, and all the Parashat Pez emes. You don't have to hide from it. This is real stuff. Whoever heard of the Arabs? The Torah says the last big battle is going to be there's a machlokas. Who's going to win between Ishmael and Edom? The Arabs have been nothing for since the time of the Golden Age in Spain. There was Arab culture, but then they were down the drain. They did nothing. You know what I mean? Now, but Hashem gave them oil. Got to have something to say. No, it's gewaltig what's going on. I told my wife if the Mashiach came tomorrow morning, I would not be surprised. You're talking to a piece of plastic, and this guy listens to you on the other side of the world. How do you do it? Come on, what is this? It's a machlokas, Rav and Shmuel. Will the Muslim Mashiach is going to be different or not? You know, so I said, look, you tell me, if Rob and Shmuel came to this world, saw me talking to Michael Kegel, you know, how much, 1,000, 2,000 miles away in a piece of plastic, and he's, you know, I mean, and he's talking to me in real time, would it's the same world or a different world? Well, on one hand, it's the same world because it's only the physical world that the man was given the power to control. But on the other hand, you have a bus flying in the air. That's the same world. Look up at a plane. The thing weighs hundreds of tons. Hundreds of tons. And it's flying around. Only one, thousands of them. You know what I mean? You tell me it's the same world or not. So I said, it is this, that's why it is the same world because it's all built on rules of physics that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is Megala. But the so-called Sof, wow, it never existed before. So I told her, I said, Mashiach comes tomorrow. I'm not worried. All this stuff here is just so, you know, Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah. All the Jews will come back. We'll be the light to the nation. We'll be telling them, you know, Torah, and it doesn't matter. You know where they are. They'll be connected. They'll be asking shilas. It's gonna, yeah. I mean, that's it. But the beauty, what I just want to bring out, which is people miss, is the depth and the seriousness of the interactions here. This is not just learning. I had another chiddush. I'm just telling my chiddushim. It's such a simple chiddush. Tehillim is not a lachash. What's a lachash? It's not a what do they say? You know, these I forgot the word in English. When you say these, it's not an incantation. You know, Tehillim is not an incantation. It has meaning. David HaMelech is really saying things. It's not. So people that don't know Hebrew, you know what I mean, or people are not thinking. Just saying, it's a nice sound. You just say it like Rav Nachman. See, you don't understand the Gemara. If you say it, you get schos. Okay. Doesn't mean you're not supposed to learn it, but okay. He says it exists on that level as an incantation. Fine. But that's not what it's meant to be, right? You're supposed to understand what it says. It's a b'diavad. If you don't understand, you blow whistles and you can just read the words and it has an effect magically, but that's not what it's about. So when you understand that, again, you see the greatness of the Torah. My friend Aaron Marcus always says he also got some art. I showed him that chart with the 24. And I said, this is only the beginning, and he see it in 3 dimensions, you know, and he started to freak out. He started to say, wow. So his phrase was he always knew that the world was waiting to catch up to the rabbis. That's his phrase. But it means that, you know, the Torah is way, way ahead of, I mean, this stuff is really from the Kodesh Baruch Hu, you know what I mean? It's deep stuff and beautiful stuff. The problem is you got to know Aramaic, you got to know Hebrew, you have to know how to think, you have to know how to handle, you have to know the rules. It's a very subtle and complex system, but it's accessible. And once you start seeing the greatness of it, that's it. I mean, it's like, wow, you know. You don't need archaeological proofs that there was a, you know, they found already, when they find the Torah, they're finding, by the way. They found recently Goliath. They found his city over there. Okay? And, you know, Gat. And it's so amazing. I mean, you read, you know, there's, unfortunately, we have, you know, in Israel, you know, we have these certain universities that are involved in knocking the Torah down. So every time they knock it down, Hashem laughs at them and shows them another proof. You know, they said, no, there was no big cities at the time of David HaMelech. It was just an imagination. So they found the city that's gigantic. This Gath city, there's a very big city, you know. So whatever.
It's in Jordan?
No, it's in I shouldn't say exactly where, but it's in southern Israel. It's Plishtim. It's near southern Israel.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, they unearthed the stuff. They found gigantic rocks down there. You know what I mean? So they say, oh, you know, wow, there really were great cities in the time of the David HaMelech. You know, the Gemara says that who was it? Joel. Oh, it just skips me. One of the kings sealed up the Gichon. Velo Hodulo. It's a Mishnah. And the Chum didn't like it. Well, they found the Gichon sealed up, and they're unsealing it now. You know, Shiloach, Mayan Shiloach, but they found the upper part now, and they found the place that was Satom, that was sealed up, and they cleaned it out. I was there. I did a nooks about it. We walked through it. So everything that they say in Tanakh, they're finding. Everything. It's not, So it's like, but I don't need all that, because once you have the Torah itself, that's the best, reality of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. But it's just unbelievable in every aspect. The Chilanim here in Eretz Yisrael are shocked. The latest Seker census said that there's now more Jews in Israel that believe in God than non-Jews. Than don't. They're like shaking. They're like, what? It's the first time this ever happened. They brought in all the Russians because they figured the Russians will be socialists and communists like myself. And then they turned out the Russians have nothing against, they have nothing against Torah. They may just ignorant. I mean, a lot of them, unfortunately, were not Jewish, but the other ones, there's no, have the same, chip on their shoulder. And they don't like Israelis particular either, what I mean? So any time, it's like with Paro, the more he tries to get rid of us, the more we expand. The same thing's happening here in the country. When the Chazon Ish got the heter for the yeshiva bachers from Ben Gurion, you know how many guys were learning Torah in yeshiva?
I know it was a handful.
400 in the whole country.
Wow.
400. I don't know what the figure is now, but you see, you walk down by at Vagan, you see all these beautiful children and the agalot and the families and they're all trailing behind, and they got strangles and they got hats and they got whatever they got. But, it's unbelievable what's going on. Unbelievable. And that's why I tell my wife, the worst thing to be in Eretz Yisrael is a Chiloni. The worst thing. Because, they have everything, all their nothingness is, no matter what they do. He brought in the Russians, to Barak, to try to get votes. In the end, they laughed at him. They started their own party. Everything they try to do cannot start. They have schools here, Chiloni schools in Yerushalayim, that are empty. This is the first time that the majority of children in the country are Haredi. And look at all the Chiloni schools, they're empty, because to be Chiloni means not to have children. Or maybe have one, if, to get married, who knows what they do, And you see these beautiful families here, that, Kanai Nahar, beautiful children, and it's an amazing thing to see. The only problem is, I told my wife now we're at a very critical level because it's the crossover. You still have the socialists and all those Chiloni, antis still are in power. They still run the government and everything, and they have this creeping Torahism that they can't do anything about. They're trying now to put them in the army. They're trying anything they can do to stop the tide. But the Kodesh Baruch Hu's doing it. He's bringing Torah back. It's like it's just gewaltig. I mean, wow. I told my wife tomorrow, if Mashiach comes tomorrow, I'll say naturally, no problem. It's all there. All the forces in the world are lined up. Paras, Melech Haravi. I have to send you that Chazal. Melech Haravi, it says. Edom. They're all lined up. All lined up. So I hope it, turns out nicely. I mean, and this lunatic has his nuclear, and he's threatening everybody. He's a lunatic, right? Could you believe such a lunatic? A nobody. He was the guy that was one of the people inside the U.S. Embassy when they first took over, when they threw out the Shah. The Shah was a friend of Eretz Yisrael. And the guy said, what is he? No, nobody. But he's a lunatic, and he's got a lunatic with power. He's doing everything he can to get this nuclear weapon. What does he want with Israel? Let him build up his country. Let him do something. Well, what are they? It's all crazy. It doesn't make any sense. I tell people, take the amount of articles in the New York Times that say the word Israel, and take China, and you see who is mentioned more, Israel or China. China has 3 billion people. What do we have here? A couple of, what do we have? 6 million people. What do we have? And in every, I heard a speech by Obama, someone sent me this thing, they're trying to, of course, Baruch Hashem, I hope he gets out of power. But so he made a speech in front of the Arabs, And remember, he also bowed down. And he kissed the king of Saudi Arabia. But anyway, he made a speech. So he's looking to say how great the Islamic culture is. So what did he come up with? And they gave us calligraphy. Calligraphy. And he said, and also their Nobel Prize winners. Now you tell me how many Arab Nobel Prize winners there are. You tell me. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's one too. I mean, but you know what I mean? But he had to go out of his way to find a way to praise Islam. And that's what he came up with. Calligraphy. They gave the world calligraphy. What are you, nuts?
I'm not even sure that's true. The Chinese, I said.
Yeah, I'm sure that. No, because they were traders. So they didn't get even the numbering system. They took all this stuff from the East and they brought it in. They weren't creative. They were just traders. They went all over the place and they took from this place to the next. But it's not the point. It's not the point. The Jewish people are mamish. Anyone has eyes to see, but you know it's Kabbalah that are not all our brethren. Okay, you're involved also. I mean, all our brothers don't have the opportunity to see it on all these levels. But what I'm trying to say, in all these levels, in the learning of Torah, in the reality of history, in the reality of where do you see a nation after 2,000 of years wandering that has any relationship to their land anymore? The Greeks are not the same Greeks, and the Mitzrim are not the same Mitzrim. Once people leave their land, that's it. There's no association anymore to land. Like the Italians in America. Okay, first generation, second generation, they assume they're called Americans now. You know, maybe they have a few customs and ceremonies. But so in every aspect, I told my wife also. I said, look, what literature? That's why I said how we decide. What literature do you have like the Torah? Everyone says it's the greatest story ever you told, but is there anything like it? Even, you know what I mean? Anything like it? Anything comes close to it? It talks about all these realities and all these levels and even the simple pshat of what it says and the wisdom that's in every line and how, you know, it's gewaltig. But people don't think about these things. That's all, and they don't have an exposure. That's why if we give them exposure to real learning, that's it. I mean, you know, this is the real. What we're doing here is seeing what the greatest Jewish mind doing when it comes to relating to the Kodesh Baruch Hu's Torah. You know, we're just presenting the information that they're doing and seeing what they're doing. But what they're doing is wow. It's like, you know, like physics and relationships, and you know, I said this could be called the theory of relativity. We're talking about the relative relationship between Nezikin and Baal Chov. Okay, that's you know, obviously there's a relationship. The question is, what's the relationship and how does it work and what are all the details? And you know, I mean, it's anyway. That's I'm really you know. No, we start with Bereshit. That's why my first Chiddush was today. Who in his right mind would talk about the creation of the world? Who could say anything? That the first day and the second day and all these details, I mean, how could you make up a thing like that? You know what I mean? I don't know. And it has to fit, you know, if it doesn't fit here, and Rashi's medayik on this letter and that letter, and with this Bereshit with a tough and without a tough, and a Rishona, and I mean, and every little letter they're, you know, involved in, and they, you know, it's like, wow. That's something beyond that. Anyway, whatever it is, that's what it is. Anyway, we didn't get to our, it was a very interesting discussion, and again, all these discussions are going to end up to a deeper understanding of what's at stake, because that's where they're all talking about here. They're talking about these in this piece. Remember, we started off high above this level, which was on the page, and we started off just locating the Meitav as a way of paying back. Then Abaya brought us the two other possibilities of Kesef and Shavet Kesef, and we had what we thought were the two opinions, Rav Huna and Papa. We had three we put on the side, by the way. They were also very valid, but the Gemara rejected them. And we got down to these two opinions, so we thought we understood that Rav Papa had all three of them equal, and Rav Huna put metaltalin on the bottom. Okay. Then all of a sudden we were surprised. Okay, we saw actually the Milk Yosef, but we were surprised when the Beis Yosef explaining the tour brought in Balchov. That was a surprise to us. And then all of a sudden we have this issue now: are all the three paybacks equal or not? And we said that's a conceptual issue. Why should all of a sudden a Nizak be able to pay back with anything? Especially if we're holding that money is what we want to return to the Nizak. So why should the Mazik, pay back with anything? And then there's a textual issue: can you prove that the connection between Nezikin and Balchov exists? That's why I wanted to bring this little Gemara. That's what I was just thinking about. That there the Gemara is showing us a relationship between the two, and of course rejecting it because of certain differences. Now, whether those differences turn out to be an essential difference or a mikra difference, so that's what we're sort of playing around with. But that's the level where hopefully we're going to get to, which is a clear analysis of the elements that are at stake, the cases that are at stake, and how they interact or don't interact with each other. That's what the people are handling at this level. And also the chiddush was that we're now off the page, basically. Okay, we're now at a new level where it's going to be background forces like the power of the relationship of Malvolova to Nezik and Mazik Nezik, which is now going to force us to push the dinim of preference one way or the other. Okay, and that's going to need determinations. That's why the Rush really has to write what he says, because he's making a determination. He's not simply making a compilation of laws. He's making a determination of what the law is. That's another very important principle here. They are giving you conclusions, which is a conclusion that came through an evaluation. It's not just, well, let's write down all the laws in the Torah in a nice, systematic way. It's a position. It's a position paper, and that position has to be backed up. And to see what's at stake is our job. I mean, that's the real job, and that is not a simple job. It takes a lot of study. And Bezrat Hashem, as we more and more involve ourselves in, like I said, because I have this background, I can now think about the other Gemara. Who's thinking about the other Gemara? We left that page a long time ago. We're on tests already. We have to go back there again. But the people who are really involved are seeing the whole universe of cases and what is shaykh and what's not shaykh and how they interact, and that's our job. Okay. All right. You have to go to sleep. I have to go to sleep, I guess. Yeah. Okay. We didn't go forward in the text, but it's very good that we did this. Again, every.
Yeah, it was a great review, actually, because we've been out of it for a while. So.
Exactly, and also there's a very important issues here that I'm trying to bring to the floor that a lot of people, again, don't see, because if you just read, like I say, a telephone book, just collect information, so you're not going to be able to see this level. It's good to have information. I also do daf yomi, but that's only the surface level of what's going on. To really be involved in the piece means to settle into what's going on and to be and to begin to realize what issues are really at stake. And that's the excitement of the learning, because that's what they're doing. That's only these people are just, that's what they're involved in. They're not involved in quick, simple, summations, let's just write some summations and some laws down or write a little pamphlet. They're evaluating situations, and Bezrat Hashem will see. So next time we get together, we'll do the Shach, again doing the Shach. Of course, the Shach is this whole idea with the Rambam, whether he is an old world or a new world figure, is a debate. That's a very big debate, you see. And the Shach wants to say that he's a new world figure, and that's the basis of the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch. So you absolutely must give Kesef and Metaltalin first, and only if you don't have them can you give Karka. That's his position. And he wants to bring proofs that that's correct. And that, as I said, will be the basis of all the other discussion. Is he correct in his evaluation or not? That's everybody's going to be basically on that point. That's That's the issue now. At this point in the depth, that's the issue. Is there a hierarchy or not a hierarchy? And can you prove it? And really it's moved to the Rambam, because the Rambam is well, also the Ramah, but the Rambam does make a statement which looks that way. So we're going to have that discussion there in the Rambam, which is going to spill into the Shulchan Aruch, because he quotes the Rambam, and so that's what they're all talking about. And Bezat Hashem will get more involved with the Shach, and we're into, when did I say the Shach? I don't know, I forgot the time, but in around 1600, I believe. So we're only 400 years away from from our present discussion. We're there, taking us a little time. It's taking us a little time, but at least it's not 3,300 years, I mean. But it's, Baruch Hashem. I was so happy that I found, when you find people who are intelligently discussing this issue, and you can't really, if you're not, anyone who talks about this issue has to be involved. This is not an issue where you can say a little vort at the Shabbos table. You know what I mean? It's too deeply involved, so only the big people really are talking here. You can't be a wannabe and be in this game. You know what I mean? Because it's a too complex of an issue to just make a little vort for the Shabbos table. So the people, Baruch Hashem, we have big people, especially from this last generation. There was also an explosion, right before the war. There was a tremendous explosion of Torah. I mean, in a positive way. Big people. And maybe, so Baruch Hashem, we have those people, and we've been able to benefit from their learning. Okay, have a great one.
I like the speed law.
What?
I just want to tell you, somebody asked me over Shabbos, one of my students, he asked me about my opinion about speed reading. So
Yeah.
I said, I guess it's a good talent to have, but why would you destroy reading for yourself by trying to read fast?
Right.
That's how I feel about this. Like, why would I want to hurry through this? This stuff is so
Exactly.
delicious. I want to take my time.
Right. And by the way, there's no way to do it fast, because you have to know what's at stake, and what's at stake is there's subtle issues here. It's like, I want to be a brain surgeon in 3 hours. Well, I did an article. On, we're not doing it, but we did an article on this man. Very interesting story. I won't tell you the whole story, but he makes chauffeurs. He reconditions them. He drills them. He does a whole. That's his whole chap. Bekitzer, he told us that an Avreich came to him a few days before Rosh Hashanah, and he said, "I want to learn how to blow the shofar. Could you teach me?" He said, definitely I could teach you, but if we start now, you'll be ready to learn. You'll be ready to blow by next Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
We live in a world, everything has to be quick and fast. You know what I mean? I turn on the lights and it goes on. You know what I mean? Fast is what we need. Like, tell me, on one leg, I want to learn all the Torah. But real things are not that way. Torah is not that way. It's Kodesh Baruch Hu is not. Right? People spending their whole life. There's another thing I told my wife. They just sold, she told me they sold Einstein's, one of his works for a few, $1 million. Right? So he was not a particularly knowledgeable person in Torah, but he made statements. So I said, why should a man who spent his whole life in physics be an authority when it comes to Torah?
Right.
I mean, why? I mean, why? Just because he happened to have, discovered something and spent a lot of time in the area of physics, and now makes him a world authority on Torah, would you say he would, be able to do a heart operation? But no, in Torah, all of a sudden, everyone, everyone has a freedom to say what they want. Anyway, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so we'll see you, Bezrat Hashem, 8:30 on Wednesday, if everything works.
Yes,
Great.
Hashem. Yeah.
Have a wonderful week.
Okay, thank you. You too.
Go home too.